Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video here on iStarly TV. Today I have some good news and bad news. I'm going to talk about the new rule set for competitive battling in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and a few updates on that. So the new rule set was announced. So if you, just a very quick rundown here. So far in Scarlet and Violet, if you've been doing competitive battling online using the ranked ladder, whether in singles or in doubles, we started with what was called Series 1 rules, which was basically every Pokemon in the Paldea Pokedex except legendary Pokemon and the Ruin legendary Pokemon and all Paradox Pokemon were also not allowed originally. So it was kind of just like the base Pokemon in the game. And then Series 2 came out, I believe, last month, I want to say, at the beginning of last month, and that introduced Paradox Pokemon into the singles and doubles ranked ladders, so you could now use Paradox Pokemon, and that's the current rule set that we are on. Now, it got really confusing, though, because Series meant that they were the new rule sets. So Series 1, again, original rules. Series 2 added Paradox Pokemon. But then there was also what was called seasons, which were basically each month is like a new season. And each series, each rule set kind of spanned multiple seasons typically. So again, I could see how that could be confusing. So the new naming convention for these new rule sets is called regulations, which is kind of an ugly word, but I think it makes sense because it makes it easier to differentiate, when we're talking about Regulation C, we know we're talking about the rule sets, whereas when we're talking about like season 4, we're talking about each month of play, I guess you could say. So anyways, Regulation C is starting on April 1st. By the way, I'm using Cerebi.net. Shout out to Cerebi. Great website, great Pokemon website, probably the best Pokemon website out there. So I'll post a link to this page in the description. But anyways, yeah, so Regulation C is going to be starting on April 1st, and it's going to span through June 30th. So this is a pretty long new rule set, and I'll talk about, obviously any new rule set that adds new Pokemon is exciting, but I'll talk about why this is also disappointing in a moment. But the new rule set is the same rules as right now, except it will add the 4 Treasures of Ruin Pokemon. These are the 4 legendary Pokemon that you can catch in Scarlet and Violet. You have to find all of their stakes floating around the map, and then you can battle them. They're all dark types, and a couple of them are really offensive, really strong, and then the other 2 are very defensive, very tanky, but they're all really cool, and I think that these 4 Pokemon they're really, really strong. I'm excited to see how they change the meta. I'll talk about each one in a moment, but the thing that I'm disappointed in here is a few reasons. If you'll notice, if we scroll down here, it says banned Pokemon. These are the Pokemon that are still not allowed in competitive ranked, in ranked play, whether in singles or doubles. The 7-star Pokemon we've gotten so far, Charizard, Cinderace, and Greninja, all 3 of those Pokemon would be pretty fun to use, and Greninja and Cinderace would actually be really strong if they were allowed. Unfortunately, they're still not allowed though, so to me it's a little disappointing. I'm excited that we're going to be able to use the Treasures of Ruin in competitive battles, but sadly, the fact that we can't use some of these other good Pokemon is pretty disappointing, especially since this rule set spans about 3 months. Not only that, but presumably Pokemon Home compatibility should be coming out either this month, March, or sometime around, I would guess, April, because all they've said is that Pokemon Home compatibility will be coming early 2023. We're almost done with early 2023, right? April would, I guess, technically still be considered early 2023. I guess technically May is also early 2023 because it's in the first half of the year, but I wouldn't personally consider that. So anyways, around April or even possibly March is when I would expect Pokemon Home compatibility, which will let us transfer Pokemon from previous games, including Pokemon like, Greninja, Charizard, even Pokemon like I think Pokemon that have been in leaks like Venusaur and other starters, those will be in Scarlet and Violet. And so if we can't use them in the ranked battles, it's kind of unfortunate. It's kind of disappointing. Other Pokemon that are banned, Berserker, of course, obviously Koraidon and Miraidon are banned because they're really strong, but Walking Wake and Iron Leaves, the 2 brand new Pokemon that were added to the games this week, are also not going to be allowed. So I was really hoping that we would be able to use a lot more Pokemon, Series 2, when they changed the rule set, when they added Paradox Pokemon, that added 14 brand new Pokemon to the format. And this new rule set is only going to be adding 3 new Pokemon, and it's going to, again, span about 3 months. So to me, I'm a little disappointed in that, though I am excited to use the Treasures of Ruin in competitive battles. Let's quickly talk about all of them. First, we have Wo-Chien, which, by the way, the shinies for all 4 of these are amazing. Currently, they're shiny locked, so you cannot obtain them as shiny in the game. It's a dark and grass type, and its ability is Tablets of Ruin. The power of this Pokemon's ruinous wooden tablets lowers the attack of all Pokemon except itself. So this Pokemon, if you look at its stats down here, it's got solid HP and a massive special defense stat, as well as a pretty good defense stat. Since it lowers the attack of opposing Pokemon, it's going to be a great physical and special tank. It's going to be a great mixed tank, and it has a pretty decent special attack and an okay attack stat. So I'm not going to spend too much time going through all of its moves, but I'm excited to use this Pokemon. I think it has a lot of potential to be an excellent tank, especially with terastallizing involved. The downside is its typing, Dark and Grass, are really bad defensively. It has a lot of weaknesses. If you've seen some of my Battle Stadium singles videos, you've seen me try to use Brute Bonnet on some of my teams. And Brute Bonnet's a cool Pokemon, but one of its biggest downsides was the fact that it's very weak to a lot of common types. So given that it shares the typing with Wo-Chien, that's going to be one big downside, but its bulk is excellent and it learns some solid moves. So I think I would keep my eye on this Pokemon. I'm excited to try it out. Next we have Chien Pao, which, I mean, again, I'm not going to keep saying this, but the shinies look amazing. This one's an Ice and Dark type, and it has the Sword of Ruin ability, which lowers the defense of all Pokemon except itself, and this Pokemon has a high attack stat with a very high speed stat, so its speed stat is on par with Flutter Mane, which is exciting. So you will speed tie with Flutter Manes. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have access to booster energy, so that's going to be a little scary, but either way, this Pokemon with that really high attack stat coupled with that ability that lowers defense means that this thing is going to be hitting really hard. It also has a lot of great moves. You know, Dark is a solid offensive type. Ice is an okay offensive type, but I think Dark is great. It also gets Ice Shard, which is nice, and Sacred Sword, Sucker Punch, Throat Chop. So I feel like this thing gets just enough of what it needs to be strong. Unfortunately, you know, it doesn't have too much going for it. It also does have Swords Dance, though. I think that this Pokemon, like I said, it has just enough tools to make it a great Pokemon, and that high attack stat, great speed stat with that ability is going to make this a scary offensive threat. The design is also awesome too. I love this Pokemon. So it's kind of like a little mini Weavile, but better than Weavile, and Weavile unfortunately just hasn't really seen any play, so this is just better than it in almost every way, pardon the rhyme. Next, there is Ting Liu, which is another really cool design. It's a Dark and Ground type. Ground is a decent defensive type. Unfortunately, Dark, as we talked about with Wo-Chien, Dark is not a great defensive type, and this is another Pokemon that's really tanky. This Pokemon lowers the special attack of all Pokemon on the battlefield, so that's great against Pokemon like Flutter Mane. I guess that's something I didn't mention with Wo-Chien, how it lowers attack. So Wo-Chien's good against physical attackers like, I don't know, Roaring Moon and stuff like that. This one will be good against all the strong special attackers in the tier, such as, of course, Flutter Mane. Also, I guess Dark is an okay defensive type sometimes because it resists Ghost, which is a pretty common type in the meta. This Pokemon has a massive HP stat of 155, as well as 125 base defense. Awkwardly, it does have a pretty low special defense, so again, I was talking about how it's going to be a decent counter to Flutter Mane, but if you just invest in like HP and special defense, it's still going to take special hits really, really well. As far as moves, I mean, it kind of just has what it needs. Again, you know, you don't really need to worry about, like, this is going to be a defensive Pokemon more than anything, I think. It does have Whirlwind, too, which I think is a pretty cool move for singles, just kind of phasing out Pokemon that try to set up. They all also have the Ruination move, which is basically a Super Fang that's a Dark type move, so it can hit Ghost types. It always cuts their HP in half. So, I mean, that's probably not a fantastic move to use, to be honest, but it's an option if you're worried about other tanky Pokemon. It also has Taunt, which is always good. And finally, we have probably my personal favorite of the four. This is Chien Pao, a Dark and Fire type. It's a goldfish for some reason, but it's really, really cool. I love it. And this Pokemon lowers the special defense of all Pokemon on the battlefield. So this is the special attacking counterpart to Chien Pao. I'm getting all their names mixed up. Chien Pao, the ice type. This one has okay speed. Base 100 is honestly not fantastic. It's actually a little slow comparing it to a lot of the other offensive threats in the meta. It's also slower than Garchomp, who is, you know, obviously a big threat to this. But of course, what you want to look at is that base 135 special attack coupled with that ability which lowers opponents' special defense. So this Pokemon is going to hit really, really hard. I think this is going to be a scary threat in the meta. A Fire and Dark type is also pretty decent offensively. It's got access to an Overheat. I mean, it has access to like all the fire moves you would expect. It also has Dark Pulse. It can also Terrastalize, which means it can change its type and give it, with Terra Blast, another coverage move to hit things that would otherwise kind of wall it. Its move pool is not super deep, but I think those stats coupled with that ability are going to make it a pretty good threat. Personally, this is the Pokemon I'm most excited to use in the new meta coming up on April 1st. So those are my thoughts about Regulation C, a little bit of an overview for these new rules. Let me know what you think about this. I'm sure a lot of us are excited. Which of these 4 Pokemon are you most excited for? But also, if you're also disappointed like me, feel free to share your thoughts, or maybe you understand where they're coming from. Feel free to open up some discussion in the comments. I'm interested in hearing it. But thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time.